our next assignment so you could see what you missed and maybe get a little bit of explanation. Okay, so number 1. As the walls in the story grow higher and more difficult to climb, how do the characters change? Okay, so this one is just basic knowledge of the story mixed along with knowledge of the theme of the story, which you should know we've gone over in our pre-lessons and the lessons you've been doing so far. The central theme of the story has to do with fear, right? So the answer here would be A, they grow more fearful. It's not that they grow happier, right? It's quite the opposite. And it's not that they're angry, they're more paranoid. And they definitely don't feel safer, okay? So A, they grow more fearful. Oh, we need to answer it? Okay, next. Read the excerpt from paragraph 5. I have no burglar bars, no gun under the pillow, but I have the same fears as people who do take these precautions. And my window panes are as thin as rime, could shatter like a wine glass. Sorry, I can't, even with my glasses on, I can't see that far away. What is the author's purpose in including these details in the subplot? A, to show that the narrator is much braver than the characters in her story. B, to describe the way people behave in real life as opposed to in stories. C, to explain why the narrator is more fearful than the characters in her story. And D, to show that the narrator shares the fears of the characters in her story. Now remember that the whole point of Nadine Gordimer's kind of almost like a paralleled short story here is she's talking about how she can't write a fairy tale but draws one in anyway and is talking about her own personal fear through the story of other people's fears, okay? So it's not to show that she's braver. Remember, we already said this all has to do with fear. It's not to describe the way people behave in real life. Hopefully not everyone behaves that way. Explain why she's more fearful than the characters in her story. I wouldn't say that she's more fearful, right? She said, I have no burglar bars, no gun under the pillow. But it does show that she has the same fears. She says, I have the same fears as people who do take these. Okay? So to show that she has the same, moving on, the little boy acted out a story. What is the best way to revise this with descriptive prepositional phrases? Okay. After school, the little boy acted out a story from a fairy tale with his friends. Okay, so it told us when, right? After school. Who? The little boy. We already had that one. And what did he do? He acted out a story. We had all of that. From where? From a fairy tale. With who? With his friends. That is good. Okay, so we added in 1, 2, 3 prepositional phrases. The little boy dramatically acted out a story. That's an adverb right there. The way he acted out. The little boy acted out a story because he was bored. No. The little boy acted out a story and then he went to bed. So the best answer here is going to be A, right? Okay. With which of these excerpts from the story includes an adverbial phrase set off with a comma? All right, now remember, these are very similar to prepositional phrases. The riots were suppressed, but there were many burglaries in the suburb. While the little boy and the pet dog raced ahead, the husband and wife found themselves comparing the possible effectiveness of each style against its appearance. Okay, so it's telling us the little boy and the pet dog raced ahead. While they were doing that, this happened. The husband and wife found themselves comparing the possible effectiveness of what? Of each style against its appearance. This is a very good answer, but let's check the other ones. There would be no way out, only a struggle, getting bloodier and bloodier. No. The husband said, don't worry, my dear, the cat always looks before they leap. No, that is not correct. It's going to be B. That's the best choice. Okay. Read the excerpt from paragraph 9. They were inscribed in a medical benefits society. Their pet dog was licensed. They were insured against a fire, flood damage, and theft, and subscribed to the local neighborhood watch, which supplied them with a plaque for their gates lettered, "You have been warned," over the silhouette of a would-be intruder. And I had to pause, but now I'm back. We may be interrupted again. I'm not sure. Okay, so what do these details tell you about the family in the story? There's really only one right answer here. We don't probably think they feel connected to their community, right? They have a big sign, stay away from us, don't come in, they're afraid of sickness. Maybe, okay, the Medical Benefit Society just means they have insurance, right? That's an older way of saying that. But they were also insured against fire, flood damage, theft, neighborhood watch. Okay, so all of that. So it's more than just sickness, right? They desperately want to be safe. This is a good answer because it's over encompassing. They want to be safe from any natural disaster. They have a dog for intruders. They have signs, they have locks. So overarchingly, they definitely desperately want to be safe. So that is the correct answer. All right. What is the author's purpose in using elements of a fairy tale? Okay. So she's using elements of the fairy tale in her story about how it's hard to write one, right? To show how difficult it is to create a fairy tale, to describe the effects of imagination on fear, to reveal the ways in which real life and fairy tales are similar, or to make her story seem even bleaker by contrast. All right. This one, I would say, was one of the more difficult questions. So she's not really, she said it's hard for her, but the point of her using the elements is not to show us how difficult it is. While she does describe the effects of the imagination on fear, that is not the purpose of her using the elements of a fairy tale. Real life and fairy tales are not typically seen as similar. They're actually the opposite, so that's not the right answer. So the right answer in this one is to make her story seem even bleaker by contrast, right? Like it's even more depressing, boring. It's bleak, right? As opposed to a fairy tale. So correct answer there will be D. Read these lines from paragraph 9. For when they began to live happily ever after, they were warned by that wise old witch, the husband's mother, not to take anyone off of the street. Choose the 2 phrases that best show that the narrator's story is a fairy tale. Okay, happily ever after. This is even the name of a movie about a fairy tale, right? Every fairy tale starts with once upon a time and ends with happily ever after. Not really, but that's the stereotype, right? That's the typical fairy tale. So that is correct. They were warned. Not always a fairy tale thing. Wise old witch. Usually you're not going to hear about a wise old witch in a regular story, and if they are, they're using witch as a name calling. They don't mean a real witch, right? The husband's mother. You won't always hear about the mother in the stories, or off the street. No, so it's going to be those 2. All right. The Latin word supprimere. I really need to learn Latin, guys. Every time I try to read y'all etymology, I'm like, wow, English teacher can't read. Supprimere is what I'm going to go with. I was practicing it earlier, and then I went to read it on camera, and you know how when you're on camera, it just left. Yeah. All right, meaning to press under helps the reader understand that suppressed in paragraph 11 means. Okay, now this one can kind of be a trick question too. You have to make sure you're looking at paragraph 11. I'm not going to go back, but you can always go back and look. If you're still really confused on this one, you can pull it back up while you're watching this video. To delay until a later time, to warn or to threaten, to put an end to forcibly, or to ignore or overlook. Okay, so it doesn't mean to delay, really, not in this sense. Not to warn or to threaten, that's not suppressed. A typical definition for suppressed is to ignore or overlook. That is not the case in this one, okay? In paragraph 11, they're using it to mean to put an end to forcibly. So make sure that you're going back and actually reading it in the text, because to delay until a later time, that is also another definition of it, and to ignore and overlook. So those are 2 good answers, but not for this specific question, okay? C is the correct answer in this one. All right. The use of prepositional phrases in the last sentence of paragraph 18. A, heightens the suspense at the climax of the story. B, gives a steady rhythm to the conclusion of the story. C, creates a sense of calm resolution. Or D, emphasizes the violence of the scene. Okay, so again, you'll need to go back and read paragraph 18 and see what it actually does for the story. Otherwise, these other answers don't make sense. But the correct answer here is B. It gives a steady rhythm to the conclusion of the story. Okay? So go back and make sure you see that rhythm, that pattern in prepositional phrases if you didn't before. All right, the cat's actions change as the world around it changes. Drag the missing event in the actions the cat takes. Excuse me. So first, cat sets off the alarm.
Oh my gosh, I definitely thought this was glassing.
No, you're good.
In front of you?
Very quickly. All right, so number 1, cat sets off the alarm. Number 2, cat climbs over the wall. Number 3, cat leaves a mark on the wall. Then what does the cat do? This is just pure knowledge of the story. The cat stops going over the wall. A little bit of common sense, but other things could have happened, right? It's a fairy tale, but eventually, ultimately, right, the cat stopped going over the wall. Okay, and then number 11 and number 12. The author includes a subplot with a narrator who tells the main story. What words and phrases does the narrator use in the subplot that create an ominous mood? Okay, first of all, ominous. It's like not so much creepy, but like a threatening, like you get this feeling that something bad will happen. So usually when we say the word ominous, we're talking about texts like Edgar Allan Poe and things where it just, somebody's going to die or something bad is going to happen, right? Cite text evidence from the passage to support your response. So make sure you actually put text evidence in there. I wrote a few of them down. I'm not going to go back and find them with you because we have other things to do today. But some of them that were mentioned were murdered, knifed, victim, threat, okay, words like that. And then you go back and give text evidence. You say, I found this in paragraph 18, and then put the quote in quotation marks, right? And then number 12, we have what are 3 ways in which the setting in the fairy tale changes? How do those changes reflect the story's theme? Cite text evidence from the story to support your response. Okay, so several things happened. The suburbs were closed off. They were unpleasant. Alarms called one another. Strangers talking about them drinking. The walls got higher. The fear grew. Right. Isolation breeds fear, and vice versa. So those were some things that happened in the story. And again, you'd use your text evidence, okay? But those were some things that changed, and none of those were good changes, right? It showed us how it was getting worse. They were important details, okay? So that is the overview of the test. If you have any additional questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me and ask. 100%, but we didn't do 11 and 12, so good job, guys. Sorry, we're not going to do those. Let me know if you need help.